I want to just repeat again that I think that there's no one policy for the world. Each country has to basically gear their policy towards their own resources and the conditions that they have. So I don't know that we can be critical of another country. I think that we can learn from other countries. And I think that China has actually kept the disease rate very low and the fatality rate very low, which is a success story. So I think that if they feel that they are able to cope with a situation where they have this very severe limitation on activity, then that's a choice that they've made, and there's certainly a benefit, but there's a cost as well, and I guess they're doing that evaluation.
Well, look at the visuals that are coming to fore, on social media or otherwise. There are people screaming while they're in lockdown. A zero COVID policy, while it may be effective in terms of scrambling down on cases, but we have people scrambling for essentials. They're screaming to be heard, literally.
I think that, my colleagues here have indicated, there's a very high cost of keeping children out of school, and there's a high cost of keeping people away from work. So I think that children should be at school as far as possible. I think that we have to make every effort not to keep them out of school. And that means that we use whatever we use, but there is a price to be paid in the infection. But I think the price of keeping them out of school, in my opinion, is probably going to be much greater.
Absolutely. I think the big topic here is keeping kids out of school, if school should be shut down again at all, if necessary. Talking about this concept of masks for kids, I want to take my next question to Dr. Pinder. It's difficult to enforce masks for kids as a concept. It's even more difficult to enforce when they are younger, say below the age of 5 years. They are the most vulnerable population when it comes to COVID-19. They are unvaccinated. Are we being complacent when it comes to COVID-19 and other viruses or other epidemics that may arise?
Yeah, I hope by virtue of us having this conversation, we're not being complacent. But masks, certainly for under fives, is very difficult to implement and to enforce and really to take people with you. And one of the key skills in public health practice is to be able to take people with you. The acceptability of what you're doing is critical, because it's one thing to have regulations and to have laws and mandates. It's another thing to make sure that they actually work. And I think this drives into this sort of question, what works and what doesn't. And as you've heard from the rest of the panel, it's very specific to certain countries, to certain situations, and to certain behaviours on the people that you're trying to sort of get to behave in a particular way. So I have, I totally agree with what's been said here, that we must send our kids back to school. There is a much longer impact which is going to be there if we don't get that right. And what is going to be the challenge on the policy side is deciding, well, which are the proportionate levers that we pull from the public health point of view, and what can we actually take the population with us. Among under fives, I've got 2 under 5-year-olds in my family. Very, very difficult to get them to wear the face coverings. And I think what you've got to focus on is the stuff that's going to give you the greatest impact at potentially the lowest cost. And certainly teenagers, certainly in high school type contexts, there is evidence that mask wearing is pretty effective there, where you have sufficiently high levels of circulating virus. And I think the key thing here is to not take anything off the table. Depending on what the behaviour is going to be, what the level of circulating virus is going to be, and what the impacts of that virus is going to be, is going to hopefully direct a pragmatic response from public health authorities.
Absolutely. I want to now ask all our guests who are joining us on WION at this hour about this term that has been trending on social media, COVID fatigue. It has set in for sure. For you, me, our family members, our kids. People are wary of lockdowns and ever-changing mandates when it comes to government policies. Have we as a generation learned to live with the virus in the best way possible? I want to start with Professor Manfred Green.
I think the only way that we can learn to live with the virus is to be creative. For example, in the schools, I think there should be much more teaching outdoors. Get the kids outside, certainly in the summer months, and I know it might be not easy in the wintertime. But in the summertime, at least, get them outdoors and take the masks off. They should be able to see each other. in any event, I think that in the classroom, the teachers should not be wearing masks. That's a risk that's taken. But I think it's very disturbing to children to be taught by a teacher wearing a mask. So I think that we know that they're going to be risks. And I would agree that the under fives I would say should be pretty much exempt from it, because it's just too much of a problem to try and enforce it, and I don't think it's fair to the kids either, or to the parents. So I think that should be done. But I think we need to be creative. Lots of ventilation, lots more outdoor teaching, and I think that's in general in society. Get the restaurants and cafes out onto the sidewalk, and get people outside. I think that's going to be something that could be very beneficial, and I think it's happening. It's happening quite a lot. So I think it can be done.
Right, absolutely. Coming to you now, Dr. Sarah Pitt, I want to ask you this question, and I may have a selfish intake in this. We're all part of WhatsApp groups. There are messages coming by the gazillions every day about new reports, cases rising. Should we panic? And if at all we choose to panic, should we be heading to our pediatrician? Or should we be taking, say, containment strategies that work for the best of us? What's your strategy when newer variants rise as a virologist?
So my answer to the idea of living with COVID is to understand what we know about this virus. It arose 2 years ago, which in virology terms is brand new and it's still changing. So panicking is not really a right thing to do, but being aware of the fact that the virus is still changing. As Professor Green was saying, we can be creative. There are lots of different responses that we can make to reducing the risk of ourselves and the risk that we pose to other people, bearing in mind that perhaps 1 in 3 people who have an active COVID infection don't have any symptoms. And that's kind of the theory behind mask wearing, social distancing. Socializing outdoors is a really good thing that you can do, because it just kind of spreads the virus in the air and it's less likely to infect other people. And so it's living with COVID means understanding this is a brand new virus, which we have to respond to kind of what the virus is doing. But panicking isn't really the right thing to do, because all the things that we've been doing for the last 2 years, we know that those are effective against any version of the virus, which is just being considerate of other people, understanding that it's spread through the air, so they're doing things which kind of stop us contributing to potentially to the spread of the virus through the air. And as I say, good ventilation in enclosed public spaces and socialising outdoors as far as it's possible, and just being aware of what's coming along on the track. And again, if someone's eligible for a vaccine and hasn't had it yet, then start your course of vaccination. That's another thing we can all do instead of worrying. There are active things which we can do, which I think probably helped make people feel a bit more reassured and a bit more in control in the face of a global pandemic that none of us have experienced, none of us expected to experience.
Absolutely. This is a pandemic that none of us have expected to experience altogether. Just a follow-up to that, Dr. Pitt, assuming that we are choosing to unmask, what should our decision be based on, depending on where we're living?
Well, I personally still wear a mask in an enclosed space. So if I'm on public transport, a train or a bus, if I'm in a shop, I still cover my face just in case I'm one of those people that has active infection but no symptoms. Some countries also are sort of encouraging people to take regular testing, and that's helpful because then you can be a little bit more confident about the way that you are one of those infectious people. And certainly, if you have any symptoms, which might be COVID, be really cautious about socialising and mixing with people particularly people who you know to be vulnerable. So friends and relatives who you know might be vulnerable to getting very serious disease with COVID, try and stay away from those people. And again, as I say, we all know what we can do. We can just keep taking those measures. And we really need to understand that we need to be considerate of other people. It isn't just about whether you do or not like wearing a mask. I don't particularly like doing it, but I do it out of consideration for other people, because I wouldn't want to be the person. If I got COVID, I might be fine, but I don't want to be the person that gave it to someone else and that person wasn't fine. So it's about being aware of each other as well as ourselves.
Absolutely. Just a final comment from you too, Professor Pinder, about is this the right time to unmask? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think the question is, if not now, then when? And you have to draw a line in the sand. And I think it's sometimes very easy as scientists, as public health experts, to sort of stand on the side and say that we have to protect everyone against COVID at all costs. The politicians are the ones who have to make those decisions. And it's very easy, again, for us to focus on COVID and then forget about all of the other things that we're not dealing with. Right now in the NHS, our National Health Service, our healthcare system in England, we have huge backlogs of operations, other elective diagnostics and procedures. And we have to make note and be concerned about all of those other issues that need sorting out. We can't look at COVID forever. But you've heard from the panel, I totally agree with them. We're here for much, much longer with this pandemic. It's certainly by no means over. And what we need to focus on is sustainable, acceptable solutions that we can simply message to people so that we can make the greatest impact.
Absolutely. I, at this point, would like to end this broadcast by thanking all our guests for joining us on WION with all their insights and views. I think something that I have deduced from this chat is that COVID is here to stay. We have to learn to live with the virus in the best way we know possible. It may not be here to stay, but we have to take the call for what works best for us and our families and children. We have to understand that children are heading to school, and if they are unvaccinated, they are still coming back to vulnerable populations, and we need to be cognizant of that. I thank all our guests for joining us on WION World is One at this hour, and thanks so much for all our viewers for tuning in at this point. Let's now take a quick break on WION, and we'll be back shortly on the other side with global news updates. Thanks for watching.
As France votes to elect a new president, it's Macron versus Le Pen again. Macron, Le Pen advanced to April 24th runoff. Pro-European economic liberal versus far-right nationalist. Will Macron win a second term? Or will France choose its first woman leader?
The French president has himself admitted that this election...
WION gets you ground reports from Paris. French election 2022. WION continuous coverage.
One World Trade Center that is the one where the impact...
Israel claims to have destroyed a rocket launching site used by the Hamas.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has made no mention of any halt to the offensive.
We at WION have tracked this story from the word go.
WION reports on the latest health threat before the world.
People diagnosed with the coronavirus in Russia may be deported back to their home countries.
The looting started early Saturday. South Africa is witnessing riots.
And hopping to a Taliban has gone down.
90 hours of non-stop live broadcast. The most extensive coverage. Biggest team of reporters on ground.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi launched the world's vaccination drive.
India will have nearly 120 million doses.
We know that our shared planet is changing for the worse.
We need constructive dialogue. It's time, it's time, it's time.
Protests like these are now a frequent affair.
A friendship that has stood the test of time, dehyphenating geopolitical equations and focusing on bilateral issues.
The place where I'm standing will be the site of the opening battle. As you can see, the reserve forces are getting ready. They're picking up the weapons here.
Ringside Ukrainian military drills. The Ukraine conflict is intensifying. WION brings you all sides of the story.
The reserve forces are
one of the many protest marches.
It's code red for humanity. The alarm bells are deafening. Wildfires, floods, and hurricanes. Extreme climate events warn of impending doom. Is the world heading towards a climate catastrophe? Watch WION's Climate Tracker weekdays at 12 p.m. GMT, 5:30 p.m. IST.
You don't know how to fix the holes in our ozone layer. You don't know how to...
Their dependency on oil and gas, or for example buying Russian oil and gas.
Now the war have made green energy much more compatible as finance.
And do you think that's possible right now, given 40% of Europe's natural gas and
we will need some time, because natural and renewable energy doesn't come in one day.
Well, thanks for staying with us. You're watching Beyond World is One. My name is Mohammed Saleh, and let's start with the top stories of the day. So Elon Musk, in his latest salvo, has questioned the intentions of the board governing Twitter. He said that the board collectively owns almost virtually no shares, and therefore its economic interests are not aligned with the interests of the company's shareholders. And just days after the formation of the new government in Pakistan, cracks within the ruling alliance have emerged, with the PPP leader Asif Ali Zardari saying that the party will not be part of the new federal cabinet. And Sri Lanka's Finance Minister Ali Sabri, along with the delegation, will leave for Washington, where the talks are scheduled with the IMF. Sri Lanka is looking for a $4 billion bailout from the global monetary body. And Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has warned peace talks with Moscow will be scrapped if the last of the Ukrainian troops defending the besieged city of Mariupol are killed by the Russian forces. Now, the French police clashed with the protesters in Paris who held demonstrations against the far-right groups. The cops resorted to using anti-riot measures such as using tear gas in a bid to try and disperse the crowd as they chanted slogans against the presidential candidate Marine Le Pen. And North Korea's official news agency has reported that North Korea has test-fired a new type of a tactical guided weapon aimed at boosting the country's nuclear capabilities. Now, the report, however, has not mentioned as to when the test actually took place, but it said that Kim Jong-un was there personally to oversee the testing. And Cristiano Ronaldo scored his 50th club hat-trick as Manchester United beat Norwich City with a scoreline of 3-2 to stay alive in the race to finish in the top four in the Premier League. Alright, so let's start with the big story that we are tracking on WION at this hour. Twitter has been in the news of late, mostly for the wrong reasons. And Elon Musk has purchased stakes in the micro-blogging website. His spat with Twitter's managing board appears to be just getting worse. From owning over 9% of the shares to rejecting the post from the board and then offering to buy out the company totally at a cost of almost about $43 billion. The Twitter's board members are obviously not impressed. But the world's richest man is not someone who is likely to give up easily. Now, one of the Twitterati's shared a list of the Twitter board members and how much each of them owns a stake in the company. Needless to say that no one came close to Elon Musk's holdings. Elon Musk replied to the data with this, where he stated, and I quote him here, "With Jack departing, the Twitter board collectively owns almost no shares. Objectively, their economic interests are simply not aligned with those of the shareholders, and this is bound to cause some stir in the San Francisco headquarters." Now remember, this has come just a day after Twitter announced a poison pill plan. It has one aim, and that is to make it harder for people like Elon Musk to get a controlling stake. The plan kicks in if over 15% of the shares are bought without the directors' agreement. The plan will allow the selling of shares to other shareholders at a discounted price. This eventually dilutes the holdings of new investors. The bid by Musk to buy the company sent shockwaves through the Twitter world. But at this point of time, Musk's proposed buyout plan faces at least three key problems. One is that of a possible rejection by the board itself. Secondly is that of assembling the money, but no one doubts that Elon Musk has the money. Thirdly, there is likely to be a major transformation of the social media giant because Elon Musk has plans of taking the company private, where he has said that membership on Twitter needs to be in the form of a paid subscription. Now, 2 weeks ago, the world's richest man, Elon Musk, had announced his over 9% stake in Twitter. He's the second largest shareholder after the mutual fund giant Vanguard, which presently controls almost about 10.3% stake in the company. Morgan Stanley, another investor, has about 8.4% stake. BlackRock, another investor, has about 6.5% stake. And the State Street Corp has an investment of about 4.5%. And also Saudi Prince Al-Walid bin Talal owns 5.2% stake in Twitter. The Tesla CEO Elon Musk is not someone who's new to controversies. The world's richest man often uses social media to further his business issues. The Tesla CEO has used the microblogging site Twitter many times in the past to communicate with different governments around the world to further his business interests. Now, recently, he took to Twitter urging the Indian government to reduce the import duties on electric vehicles in January 2022. Elon Musk claimed that the EV maker is facing a lot of challenges for its car launch in India. The Tesla has been facing regulatory hurdles in the launch of its electric cars in the country for quite some time now. Elon Musk appealed to the Indian government to reduce the import duties so that the Tesla electric car could become affordable for the Indian public. Now, the Indian government has been insisting that Elon Musk should first set up a local factory in India, manufacture the cars in India, and then sell them to the Indian public. But Elon Musk has been insisting that the sensible way of doing business is to actually bring in a few cars in India, test out the amount of interest the Indian public has in purchasing Tesla, and then subsequently set up a giga-style factory in India. However, the Indian government is not willing to play ball, and it has said that it will not change its rules unless Tesla decides to first set up factory here in India. In addition to this, remember, the Indian government has also asked Starlink, which is a satellite-based broadband company owned by Elon Musk, to refund the money that it received in pre-orders from Indian customers until the broadband giant acquires its commercial license to operate in the country. Meanwhile, analysts are very skeptical of the misuse of the social media platform Twitter if Elon Musk takes over the microblogging platform, which is subjected to its shareholders of acceptance of Musk's proposal to buy out 100% stake. Then the Tesla CEO could modify Twitter's rules and regulations and the usage of the social media handles in furthering his business interests. Now, looking at the way Elon Musk has functioned, Twitter under his leadership could face more compliance issues in many parts of the world. There's also a bigger question of how the social media giant will operate if and when Elon Musk were to take over. Twitter last year had faced a lot of heat from the Indian government for not blocking some tweets that the Indian government claimed were simply objectionable to it. Twitter said that these tweets did not violate any of their community guidelines. Now, the microblogging platform failed to meet the timeline set by the regulatory authorities in India. The run-ins with the Indian government had created quite a bit of a controversy, raising questions about the arbitrary nature with which these new age media companies actually function, where they do not necessarily always listen to the governments in the countries where they operate.
India's neighborhood on the boil. Pakistan and Sri Lanka in turmoil. Pakistan gets a new prime minister after no trust vote. Sri Lanka prime minister stares at a no trust vote.
For the Rajapaksas, these decisions could spell the end of their regimes.
And in an act of protest have come together in unity.
Now all eyes would be on this building.
WION tracks the biggest stories from South Asia. Imran takes his fight to the streets. Rajapaksas reach out to protesters in vain. Every detail, all updates, only on WION.
The South Asia's debt-ridden nation of Sri Lanka has turned to the International Monetary Fund for a bailout package. Finance Minister Ali Sabri will be heading to Washington later today to hold talks with the global monetary body. The negotiations for an immediate bailout have come amidst the foreign exchange dearth that Sri Lanka is facing, which has made Sri Lanka incapable of financing even the most essential of imports that it needs, such as basic food and fuel. The Central Bank of Sri Lanka, remember, has suspended foreign debt payments and has diverted the dwindling foreign reserves to importing essentials. Sri Lanka needs anywhere from $3 to $4 billion this year to pull itself out of an unprecedented economic crisis. The talks are scheduled to begin in Washington on the 18th of April. If the delegation were to succeed in making a decent case before the IMF, then the emergency relief fund can be expected within weeks. Citing the economic crisis in the country and also rising external funding pressures, multiple rating agencies have downgraded Sri Lanka's sovereign ratings. Fitch, for instance, has downgraded Sri Lanka's foreign currency rating. The credit rating agency has said that the move reflects its view that a sovereign default process has already begun. Standard & Poor's Global has said in a statement that Sri Lanka's debt restructuring process is likely to be very complicated and could take several months to be completed. As the government is scrambling to secure external assistance, analysts at JP Morgan have underlined political instability as the key risk. The IMF's mission chief for Sri Lanka, Masahiro Nozaki, has reported saying that the IMF supports the country's plans to engage with creditors. We assess Sri Lanka's debt to be unsustainable and that the country's fiscal efforts and macroeconomic policy adjustments alone could not restore debt stability in the country. The IMF also extended help to Sri Lanka the last time in 2016. The loan was capped at about $1.5 billion and the program was prematurely terminated after disbursing about $1.3 billion. Sri Lanka has also turned to countries including China and India for support amidst a weak foreign reserves position. The nation is also in talks with the World Bank and the Asian Development Bank for more support. Now remember, it's not just the common citizens, but even prominent personalities who are joining the protest. Sri Lanka's ex-skipper, Sanath Jayasuriya, has joined the student-led demonstration outside the Sri Lankan President's Secretariat. Now, Sri Lanka's World Cup winning cricket captain Arjuna Ranatunga and fellow ex-skipper Sanath Jayasuriya joined the street protests, demanding for the President Gotabaya Rajapakse to step down due to the very poor management of the country's economy. Now, each dawn in Sri Lanka appears to be bringing a new set of problems. There are acute power shortages. There is fuel rationing that has been announced. There's a crisis of even the availability of food. And now in the latest episode of Sri Lanka's economic crisis, the stock exchange has now been halted from trading for about 5 days. The announcement was made by the Colombo Stock Exchange and was put into force as the crisis-hit nation hiked interest rates and declared default on its external debt. The move has come after the island nation held talks with the International Monetary Fund, and the talks were conducted to negotiate a bailout process. Considering that the country has run out of foreign exchange to finance even the most essential of imports, the Colombo Stock Exchange All-Share Index has shed over 38% in the last 3 months. Along with this, the Sri Lankan rupee has fallen by more than 35% against the US dollar. So, in all, the Sri Lankan economy is in a complete bit of a tailspin considering its current foreign debt status. Sri Lanka has sought debt relief from India and China. However, both countries have resorted to offer flexible loan options. On the ground, however, the protesters remain adamant. They want the President, Gotabaya Rajapakse, to immediately resign. Sri Lankans have camped outside of the Presidential Secretariat for almost about a week now. Their single-line demand is that the Rajapakses who govern the country should immediately go.
For years and years, the Rajapaksa government has been taking money from us and really stealing from us, and we are sick and tired of this tyranny because this is there's so much nepotism here. The Prime Minister and President are brothers, and we really want them to go away from here because when they are here, most of us don't see any prosper for our nation, because as long as they're here, they won't be able to fix our economy because they don't want to fix our economy.
We are facing a lot of difficulties. We don't have petrol for our vehicles, no diesel, and no gas for cooking. And the essential items are highly expensive. So very poor people in this country are suffering like nothing.
It's not just the common citizens, but even the prominent personalities who are now joining the protests. All right, let's now shift our attention to what is happening in Pakistan. Now, the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf held protests against the ouster of the Imran Khan administration, with thousands of people participating at the Karachi rally in support of their former Prime Minister. The PTI workers, along with thousands of Imran Khan's supporters, took to the streets of Pakistan's Karachi, and addressing the rally, Pakistan's Tehreek-e-Insaf chairperson Imran Khan asked his supporters if his now-dissolved government was up against a foreign conspiracy or was there a mere interference. This was an indirect reference to the Inter-Services Public Relations Director General, Major General Babar's recent remarks on the National Security Committee that was held last month. Imran Khan, however, did not mention about the Pakistani military openly during his speech.
बातचीत करने आया हूं क्योंकि मसला आपके मुस्तकबिल का है। कराची के लोगों, मसला आपके बच्चों के मुस्तकबिल का है। इसलिए मैं आज आया हूं और मुझे बड़ी खुशी है कि आज मैं सारी जगह पाकिस्तान के झंडे देख रहा हूं, क्योंकि मसला तहरीक इंसाफ का नहीं, पाकिस्तान का मसला है। मेरे पाकिस्तानियों, ये जो साजिश हमारे मुल्क के खिलाफ हुई, मैं चाहता हूं आप आराम से पहले सुन लें कि ये साजिश थी या मुदाखलत थी।
Imran Khan continued to accuse the United States of America of plotting against his government, alleging that this was due to the fact that he had refused to bow down before its demands to sanction Russia. He told the crowd that the United States Assistant Secretary of State for South Asian Affairs, Donald Lu, had threatened to push Pakistan onto the edge if the no-confidence motion against him had not succeeded.
इमरान खान के खिलाफ अदम एतमाद कामयाब ना हुआ तो पाकिस्तान के ऊपर बड़ी मुश्किलों का सामना करना पड़ेगा। धमकी दी और फिर कहता कि अगर अदम एतमाद इमरान खान के खिलाफ कामयाब होगी तो पाकिस्तान को माफ कर दिया जाएगा।
The PTI chief also questioned the judiciary of Pakistan. During his speech in Karachi, Khan repeated his grievance against the judiciary over his ouster, questioning its decision to open the courts at midnight and asking again as to what crime had he committed to warrant such a move by the court. He also slammed the now sworn-in Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif. The former cricketer, the World Cup winning captain of Pakistan, called out the sitting government and its allied parties for siding with the United States to unseat him. He also accused this incumbent government of Shehbaz Sharif of being a foreign stooge. He pointed out that Sharif was actually out on bail and accused the current regime of being a group of criminals who would only rob Pakistanis of their future. All right, let's also now take a quick look as to what is making news in the world of sports. Now, Liverpool survived a late scare to remain on course for a historic quadruple as they reached the FA Cup finals with a 3-2 victory over Manchester City at Wembley Stadium. Liverpool took the lead in the 9th minute of the match when Ibrahima Conte headed home from an Andy Robertson corner. A dreadful error from Manchester City's goalkeeper Zach Steffen gifted the Reds a second one in the 17th minute. Sadio Mane then scored his second just before half-time, and Manchester City hit back immediately after the restart. And Bernardo Silva pulled another back at the start of the 10th period of the stoppage time. But Liverpool held on and will now face either Chelsea or Crystal Palace in the finals on the 14th of May. Meanwhile, Cristiano Ronaldo's 50th club career hat-trick and second Premier League treble of the season earned below par Manchester United a 3-2 victory over Norwich City on Saturday. Now, it seems a fan protest at Old Trafford, the Portuguese talisman had put United in control of the game, scoring twice inside of 32 minutes. But Kieran Dowell and Thibaut Fouquet's goals on either side of the break put the Old Trafford faithful at ease. The 37-year-old then drove a free kick home off the inside of the post 14 minutes from time to complete his hat-trick and secure victory for the Red Devils.
Cristiano Ronaldo! That is brilliant! That is breathtaking from Cristiano Ronaldo! Absolutely stunning!
Meanwhile, Lucknow Super Giants skipper KL Rahul scored his third IPL century as the IPL New Boys handed the league's most successful team, Mumbai Indians, their sixth straight defeat of the season. Batting first, Lucknow rode on KL Rahul's unbeaten 60-ball 103 to set 200-run target for the five-time champions. And Mumbai's run chase never really took off as Rohit Sharma and Ishan Kishan continued to struggle at the top. The 64-run partnership between Surya Kumar Yadav and Tilak Verma was Mumbai's only substantial partnership as their innings ended at 181 for 9, falling short of the target by over 18 runs. Mumbai now required to win all of their remaining matches to give themselves an outside chance of qualifying for the playoffs.
So that is that, and fully deserved. The batters have set thanks to that man there, KL Rahul, and the bowlers under pressure at times got their side.
Well, that's all the time we have in this edition of the News Bulletin. Stay tuned to WION.
Israel claims to have destroyed a rocket launching site used by the Hamas.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has made no mention of any halt to the offensive.
We at WION have tracked this story from the word go.
WION reports on the latest health threat before the world.
People diagnosed with the coronavirus in Russia may be deported back to their home countries.
The looting started early Saturday.
South Africa is witnessing riots.
And hoping to a Taliban-led fall down.
Hours of non-stop live broadcast. The most extensive coverage. Biggest team of reporters on ground.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi launched the world's biggest vaccination drive.
India will have nearly 120 million doses.
We know that our shared planet is changing for the worse.
We need constructive dialogue. It's time, it's time, it's time.
Protests like these are now a frequent in.
A friendship that has stood the test of time, dehyphenating geopolitical equation and focusing on bilateral issues.
The place where I'm standing will be the site of the opening battle. See, the reserve forces are getting ready. They're picking up the weapons here.
Ringside, Ukrainian military drills. The Ukraine conflict is intensifying. WION brings you all sides of the story.
The reserve forces are one of the many protest marches.
It's code red for humanity. The alarm bells are deafening. Wildfires, floods, and hurricanes. Extreme climate events warn of impending doom. Is the world heading towards a climate catastrophe? Watch WION's Climate Tracker, weekdays at 12 p.m. GMT.
Minister Georgiadis, welcome to WION's Straight Talk. Thank you so much for joining us. Your foreign minister was recently invited to India for a 2-day visit, and a number of regional and international issues were discussed, and the two sides decided to continue their cooperation on a number of issues. So where does relations stand between the two sides at this point?
We have excellent relations with India. Just before COVID, India was the honorable country in Thessaloniki Fest, which is the biggest event in Greece. Because of COVID, we didn't have the opportunity to have some official trips to India. I will go to India, also have invitation from my colleague, Minister of Development and Commerce of India, to go there. And we want to find a way to accelerate our relation with India. I'm very proud and happy as Minister of Development and Investment that some significant investment, especially in renewable energy, has come recently to Greece from India. So the future between Greece and India seems bright.
And you are in New York for a number of meetings, and investment in Greece is on top of your agenda. You've been taking numerous trips around the world and now in the United States, in New York. Considering the fact that there's a war going on in Europe right now, do you think there is a concern, and how has that impacted your trip in any way?
First of all, the first 2 years of my term in the Ministry of Development, I received the office on July 2019, were really great. We managed these 2.5 years to attract in Greece some significant foreign direct investments from Pfizer, from Microsoft, from Digital Realty, from Amazon Web Services, from Meta Facebook, and various others. So we want to continue the same path. But the war hasn't really influenced the investments at all in Greece. I can say it has accelerated the process of renewable energy. You see, the war in Ukraine has caused a huge need to European countries to stop buying natural gas from Russia as much as they can. So the needs of producing renewable energy, which is much cheaper now than the energy that comes from oil and gas, it's huge. And Greece is a country with big potential in this area because we have solar power very strong, since the sunny days in Greece is almost every day, and we have a lot of wind power in our mountains and in the sea. So huge funds are now on their way to invest in Greece in renewable energy.
That's very interesting. And is that something that perhaps maybe a few years down the line, European countries are hoping to move away and end their dependency on oil and gas, or, for example, buying Russian oil and gas? I mean,
all the European agenda is green energy. I mean, beyond the war. It was green energy before the war. Now, the war has made green energy much more compatible as finance, because it's much cheaper. So now we have the need to buy as less natural gas from Russia we can, and we have the motive, which is it's much cheaper. So you see how the system works. If there is a big benefit, the investment will come.
And do you think that's possible right now, given 40% of Europe's natural gas and
we will
oil?
need some time, because natural renewable energy doesn't come in one day. You have some license procedure in front. In Greece, we have managed with the current government to reduce bureaucracy at all. Before we were elected, in order to have the permits for a windmill electricity park, you would need 5 to 6 years. These have been accelerated to less than a year now. So if you come and you decide to build your own investment, in less than a year you'll have your permits, and then you will build it, and in, let's say 2 years the most, you'll have your first income.
What was fascinating is that Greece can also be an energy hub when it comes to pipeline project, gas projects for the rest of Europe as well. The East Med gas pipeline between Greece, Cyprus, and Israel was in the process of perhaps really providing that until the United States withdrew its support because it wasn't green enough or it wasn't economically friendly enough. But that was an opportunity for Greece, wasn't it? Or is it still ongoing?
I love the United States of America.
Okay.
I really love it. It's not as a support. I love the United States of America. But EastMed is not a decision that is going to be made from the United States of America.
Okay.
To be honest, the United States of America has nothing to do with EastMed. Okay. EastMed is a decision between Greece, Cyprus, and Israel. If we decided to do it, we will do it. Our American friends maybe like it, maybe not, but it's not their job. So simple as that.
Are you going to go along? Is it good? There's an alternative, though.
It's a very good process to be done.
Okay.
And today our Prime Minister announced the escalation of all the investigations for natural gas in Greece. We know now that we have significant resources of natural gas in Greece. If you combine that with the natural gas in Cyprus and with the natural gas in Israel, then everything makes sense.
There's another opportunity between Greece and Turkey, the Trans-Adriatic pipeline as well. Is that something that you would be open to?
Turkey in our neighborhood, to be honest, has some turbulence, not only with us, but almost with everybody in the region. So I cannot really say.
Right.
If they decide to have friendly relations with all their neighbors, they would be welcome. But friendly relations can be stand only in international law and respect of international law. So we're waiting Turkey to respect international law, and then everything is okay.
A few years ago, there was a proposal for a Greek-centric NATO corridor to block Russia from the Black Sea, considering what Russia is doing in Ukraine right now. Is that something that maybe Greece might...
Greece has accelerated our strategic relations with the United States of America. We have signed a new agreement. We have given one of our most strategic points in Greece, Alexandroupolis port, in order to have an American base there. A lot of American troops are there now. This has started before the invasion of Russia and Ukraine, and now it's much, much more important because of the invasion and the instability in the region. Yes, Greece could play a key role of stability in the region, of course, with our ally, the United States of America.
Right. And when it comes again to Turkey, both Greece and Turkey, they play such a vital role in changing the security situation in Europe after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Do you think that perhaps with the recent news that we heard that there might be some kind of rapprochement after the Russian invasion of Ukraine and the security situation?
We have not the same policy with Turkey in this issue, to be very honest. Greece is a country that day one supported Ukraine. Not only talked against Russia, but implemented all the sanctions European Union, the United States of America decided against Russia. We sent weapons to Ukrainian people to defend themselves, and all the other help we could. Turkey, even though it's a member of NATO alliance, has not implemented sanctions against Russia. It plays both sides in a way. Some would say it's a smart move in order to be able to negotiate with Ukraine and Russia for peace. Okay, maybe this is one way to see it. Others, like me, would say they just want to earn money from the sanctions, and this is not very fair and just.
And what about the hydrocarbon resource and naval influence standoff that Greece and Turkey entered in 2020 in the Mediterranean? Is there any meeting ground regarding that?
There's not serious talks about that with Turkey. We have a lot of other issues to solve first. There are some talkings. Greece is a country of stability. We want peace, of course, and we want good relations with Turkey. I have to be very honest on that. But as I told you before, good relations between nations and states can only stand on respect one against the other. And respect between nations and states stands on international law. Turkey, as we speak, threatens Greece with war if we just follow what international maritime law gives us as a right. Threatening someone with war is against international law, and of course occupies the 40% of Cyprus. With all this in the table, the relation can be, let's say, balanced, but they cannot be really good.
It was very interesting that I read, and I know a lot of investors would be happy to hear that you mentioned that there won't be much COVID restrictions in Greece in the near future. And this is something that a lot of countries and a lot of cities have been grappling with. That would welcome investment in a lot of ways.
Now Greece is in a much more normal way due to COVID. Not as free as here in the United States, to be honest, but a lot more. I think in the early May, everything will be over. You see, we have already vaccinated more than 85% of our population. So the people that are vaccinated, they don't really have danger from COVID in order to lose their life. Unfortunately, some have not been vaccinated yet, but life goes on. We have to follow our economy and our life and help all the other people that unfortunately have not get vaccinated yet to treat themselves if they are sick as much as we can.
Mr. Minister, you seem very passionate about the renewable energy process for the European Union, and the European Union really does seem to have a will to move away from oil and gas, natural oil and gas in a lot of ways. But do you think that's feasible, and do you think there is an understanding between EU countries and member states? There's an agreement that this should be the case moving forward. Do you think everyone is on the same page?
Other countries more up front, other countries more behind. This is how life always goes on. Mm-hmm. But I'm telling you again, war in the invasion of Russia and Ukraine will accelerate this process, because now the profit someone can get if compares the price of energy from a windmill or a solar power plant through natural gas or oil, it's huge. So for the budget of the states, for the budget of the people, of the business, of the industry, renewable now is much more efficient. So investment will come to this area, and Greece will play a key role on that because we have natural advantages.
Mm-hmm. And regarding the, and I keep going back to this is something that everyone is focused on, the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Turkey is playing a mediating role right now. Are you optimistic? How is this all going to end in your view? What will happen ultimately?
I hope the war will end today as we speak. I hope it will end tomorrow. I'm not sure this will happen, to be very honest.
Yeah.
I see that there's a big trouble there. Mr. Putin for sure miscalculated things.
Yeah.
He thought that Ukrainian people will just surrender and will not resist. This is not the case. I have to be very honest. I respect the people of Ukraine that they decided to resist to someone that tried to occupy their country. This is something that has dignity inside, and I wish them all the success in the fight for freedom. I understand that war is a disgusting thing. Terrible things are happening now in Ukraine. War crimes are happening in Ukraine. And I'm not sure that there will be a fast end to all this story.
It's going to be a long war.
I'm afraid.
Yeah. Mr. Minister, thank you so much for joining us on WION Straight Talk. Thank you.
Thank you very
come
much.
back.
India's neighborhood on the boil. Pakistan and Sri Lanka in turmoil. Pakistan gets a new prime minister after no trust vote. Sri Lanka prime minister stares at a no trust vote.
For the Rajapaksas, these decisions could spell the end of their regime.
And in an act of protest have come together in unity.
Now all eyes would be on this building.
WION tracks the biggest stories from South Asia. Imran takes his fight to the streets. Rajapaksas reach out to protesters in vain. Every detail, all updates, only on WION.
The South Asia's debt-ridden nation of Sri Lanka has turned to the International Monetary Fund for a bailout package. Finance Minister Ali Sabri will be heading to Washington later today to hold talks with the global monetary body. The negotiations for an immediate bailout have come amidst the foreign exchange dearth that Sri Lanka is facing, which has made Sri Lanka incapable of financing even the most essential of imports that it needs, such as basic food and fuel. The Central Bank of Sri Lanka, remember, has suspended foreign debt payments and has diverted the dwindling foreign reserves to importing essentials. Sri Lanka needs anywhere from $3 to $4 billion this year to pull itself out of an unprecedented economic crisis. The talks are scheduled to begin in Washington on the 18th of April. If the delegation were to succeed in making a decent case before the IMF, then the Emergency Relief Fund can be expected within weeks. Citing the economic crisis in the country and also rising external funding pressures, multiple rating agencies have downgraded Sri Lanka's sovereign ratings. Fitch, for instance, has downgraded Sri Lanka's foreign currency rating. The credit rating agency has said that the move reflects its view that a sovereign default process has already begun. Standard & Poor's Global has said in a statement that Sri Lanka's debt restructuring process is likely to be very complicated and could take several months to be completed. As the government is scrambling to secure external assistance, analysts at JP Morgan have underlined political instability as the key risk. The IMF's mission chief for Sri Lanka, Masahiro Nozaki, has reported saying that the IMF supports the country's plans to engage with creditors. We assess Sri Lanka's debt to be unsustainable and that the country's fiscal efforts and macroeconomic policy adjustments alone could not restore debt stability in the country. The IMF also extended help to Sri Lanka the last time in 2016. The loan was capped at about $1.5 billion and the program was prematurely terminated after disbursing about $1.3 billion. Sri Lanka has also turned to countries including China and India for support amidst a weak foreign reserves position. The nation is also in talks with the World Bank and the Asian Development Bank for more support. Now remember, it's not just the common citizens but even prominent personalities who are joining the protest. Sri Lanka's ex-skipper Sanath Jayasuriya has joined the student-led demonstration outside the Sri Lankan President's Secretariat. Sri Lanka's World Cup winning cricket captain Arjuna Ranatunga and fellow ex-skipper Sanath Jayasuriya joined the street protests, demanding for the President Gotabaya Rajapakse to step down due to the very poor management of the country's economy. Now, each dawn in Sri Lanka appears to be bringing a new set of problems. There are acute power shortages. There is fuel rationing that has been announced. There's a crisis of even the availability of food. And now in the latest episode of Sri Lanka's economic crisis, the stock exchange has now been halted from trading for about 5 days. The announcement was made by the Colombo Stock Exchange and was put into force as the crisis-hit nation hiked interest rates and declared default on its external debt. The move has come after the island nation held talks with the International Monetary Fund, and the talks were conducted to negotiate a bailout process. But considering that the country has run out of foreign exchange to finance even the most essential of imports, the Colombo Stock Exchange All-Share Index has shed over 38% in the last 3 months. Along with this, the Sri Lankan rupee has fallen by more than 35% against the US dollar. So, in all, the Sri Lankan economy is in a complete bit of a tailspin considering its current foreign debt status. Sri Lanka has sought debt relief from India and China. However, both countries have resorted to offer flexible loan options. On the ground, however, the protesters remain adamant. They want the President, Gotabaya Rajapakse, to immediately resign. Sri Lankans have camped outside of the Presidential Secretariat for almost about a week now. Their single-line demand is that the Rajapakses who govern the country should immediately go.
For years and years, the Rajapaksa government has been taking money from us and really stealing from us, and we are sick and tired of this tyranny because this is there's so much nepotism here. The Prime Minister and President are brothers, and we really want them to go away from here because when they are here, most of us don't see any prosper for our nation, because as long as they're here, they won't be able to fix our economy because they don't want to fix our economy.
We are facing a lot of difficulties. We don't have petrol for our vehicles, no diesel, and no gas for cooking. And the essential items are highly expensive. So the very poor people in this country are suffering like nothing.
It's not just the common citizens, but even the prominent personalities who are now joining the protests. All right, let's now shift our attention to what is happening in Pakistan. Now, the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf held protests against the ouster of the Imran Khan administration, with thousands of people participating at the Karachi rally in support of their former Prime Minister. The PTI workers, along with thousands of Imran Khan's supporters, took to the streets of Pakistan's Karachi, and addressing the rally, Pakistan's Tehreek-e-Insaf chairperson Imran Khan asked his supporters if his now-dissolved government was up against a foreign conspiracy or was there a mere interference. This was an indirect reference to the Inter-Services Public Relations Director General, Major General Babar's recent remarks on the National Security Committee that was held last month. Imran Khan, however, did not mention about the Pakistani military openly during his speech.
अपने लोगों के बड़ी खास बातचीत करने आया हूं, क्योंकि मसला आपके मुस्तकबिल का है। कराची के लोगों, मसला आपके बच्चों के मुस्तकबिल का है। इसलिए मैं आज आया हूं और मुझे बड़ी खुशी है कि आज मैं सारी जगह पाकिस्तान के झंडे देख रहा हूं, क्योंकि मसला तहरीक इंसाफ का नहीं, पाकिस्तान का मसला है। मेरे पाकिस्तानियों, ये जो साजिश हमारे मुल्क के खिलाफ हुई, मैं चाहता हूं आप आराम से पहले सुन लें कि ये साजिश थी या मुदाखलत थी।
Imran Khan continued to accuse the United States of America of plotting against his government, alleging that this was due to the fact that he had refused to bow down before its demands to sanction Russia. He told the crowd that the United States Assistant Secretary of State for South Asian Affairs, Donald Lu, had threatened to push Pakistan onto the edge if the no-confidence motion against him had not succeeded.
इमरान खान के खिलाफ अदम एतमाद कामयाब ना हुआ तो पाकिस्तान के ऊपर बड़ी मुश्किलों का सामना करना पड़ेगा। धमकी दी और फिर क्या था कि अगर अदम एतमाद इमरान खान के खिलाफ कामयाब होगी तो पाकिस्तान को माफ कर दिया जाएगा।
The PTI chief also questioned the judiciary of Pakistan. During his speech in Karachi, Khan repeated his grievance against the judiciary over his ouster, questioning its decision to open the courts at midnight and asking again as to what crime had he committed to warrant such a move by the court. He also slammed the now sworn-in Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif. The former cricketer, the World Cup winning captain of Pakistan, called out the sitting government and its allied parties for siding with the United States to unseat him. He also accused this incumbent government of Shehbaz Sharif of being a foreign stooge. He pointed out that Sharif was actually out on bail and accused the current regime of being a group of criminals who would only rob Pakistanis of their future. Well, that's all the time we have in this edition of the News Bulletin. Stay tuned to WION.
Sharma Upadhyay reports from Tel Aviv, Colombo, Wuhan, Bogota, Washington. claims to have destroyed a rocket launching site used by the Hamas.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has made no mention of any halt to the offensive.
We at WION have tracked this story from the word go.
WION reports on the latest health threat before the world.
People diagnosed with the coronavirus in Russia may be deported back to their home countries.
The looting started early Saturday.
South Africa is witnessing riots.
Hopping through a Taliban had gone down.
Hours of non-stop live broadcasts. The most extensive coverage. Biggest team of reporters on ground.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi launched the world's biggest vaccination drive.
India will have nearly 120 million doses.
We know that our shared planet is changing for the worse.
We need constructive dialogue. It's time, it's time, it's time.
Protests like these are now a frequent
A friendship that has stood the test of time, dehyphenating geopolitical equation and focusing on bilateral issues.
The place where I'm standing will be the site of the opening battle. You can see the reserve forces are getting ready. They're picking up the weapons here.
Ringside, Ukrainian military drills. The Ukraine conflict is intensifying. WION brings you all sides of the story.
The reserve forces are one of the many protest marches.
Well, thanks for staying with us. You're watching WION World is One. My name is Mohammed Saleh, and let's start with the top stories of the day. Elon Musk, in his latest salvo, has questioned the intentions of the board of Twitter. He said that the board collectively owns almost no shares, and therefore its economic interests are not aligned with the interest of the company's shareholders. In a massive show of strength at a rally that Imran Khan held in Karachi, the former Pakistani Prime Minister raised the issue of a foreign conspiracy that he claimed had toppled his government. This after the Pakistani army had clarified that there was no mention of the word conspiracy that was made at the National Security Council meeting. And protests in Sri Lanka continue for the 8th straight day, with the trade unions laying siege to the President Gotabaya Rajapakse's seafront office, demanding for his immediate ouster from the government because of the economic crisis that has been brought about because of his very poor financial mismanagement. And Russia calls on the Ukrainian troops in Mariupol to lay down their arms and to surrender till 6 a.m. Moscow time in order to save their lives. This after Kremlin has confirmed that its troops had cleared the city and only a small contingent of the Ukrainian defenders still remain. And this was the scene in central Paris as the French police clashed with the protesters who held up demonstrations against the far right in French politics. The COP resorted to using certain anti-right measures such as tear gas to disperse the crowd as it chanted slogans against the presidential candidate Marine Le Pen. And the North Korean news agency has reported that the country has test-fired a new type of a tactical guided weapon aimed at boosting the country's nuclear capabilities. The report has failed to mention as to when the test took place, but it said that Kim Jong-un was there to personally observe the test. And Cristiano Ronaldo scores his 50th club hat-trick as Manchester United beat Norwich City with a scoreline of 3-2 to stay alive in the race to finish in the top 4 in the Premier League.
Cristiano Ronaldo! That is brilliant! That is breathtaking!
As France votes to elect a new president, it's Macron versus Le Pen again. Macron, Le Pen advanced to April 24th runoff. Pro-European economic liberal versus far-right nationalist. Will Macron win a second term? Or will France choose its first woman leader?
The French president has himself admitted that this election...
WION gets you ground reports from Paris. French election 2022. WION continuous coverage.
All right, now France is due to elect its next president. The runoff elections are to be held in the next few days. And in anticipation of this, thousands of people marched across the country against the rise of the far right in French politics, with the demonstrators targeting the presidential candidate Marine Le Pen, who's putting up a pretty stiff fight against the incumbent president Emmanuel Macron. Now, these protesters said that they want to prevent Marine Le Pen from winning the election runoff against Emmanuel Macron on the 24th of April. The protests against the far right have intensified. The police had warned of possible incidents as the demonstrators convened in over 30 cities across France. And this is what the scene looked like in central Paris, where thousands of people gathered chanting anti-far right slogans and also warning of a democratic upheaval if Marine Le Pen were to win the elections.
Parce que je suis républicain. Et que Marine Le Pen est l'ennemi de la République.
Now, this prompted the French security forces to fire tear gas in an attempt to try and disperse the Parisians. After a brief halt, the protests, of course, continued to march in the capital. They chanted slogans and raised up banners against Marie Le Pen. One of the signs read, "Against the far right, for justice and equality. Do not let Marie Le Pen at the Elysee." And also many of the protesters slammed the centrist leader Emmanuel Macron, with supporters of the left part rejecting both candidates, calling for solidarity against quote-unquote the fascists who are taking over the country.
Qu'il n'y a pas que des fachos dans ce pays et qu'il n'y a pas que des gens qui sont ni pro-Macron ni pro-Le Pen et que la gauche elle est encore là dans ce pays, voilà, et qu'il y a encore un peu de solidarité.
And also the far-right presidential candidate Marie Le Pen slammed the protesters, calling the demonstrations as anti-democratic. She appealed to the voters to vote for her and to help ensure that the democratic fibre of the country is maintained.
Qu'il y ait des gens en France qui manifestent contre les élections, c'est quand même quelque chose d'assez étonnant. Je vous le dis en souriant, mais je pourrais vous le dire gravement, parce que il y a quand même des dizaines de pays dans le monde dans lesquels il n'y a pas d'élection. Et venir manifester contre les résultats d'une élection, je trouve que c'est profondément antidémocrate. Et donc je pense que les Français trouvent ça désagréable de voir que leur choix est ainsi contesté dans la rue par l'intermédiaire de manifestations. Donc moi, j'ai envie de dire à tous ces gens, allez donc voter, voilà. C'est aussi simple que ça.
Meanwhile, the protests in Nantes turned violent. Scuffles broke out between the police and the crowd in the streets. But during the march against Marie Le Pen in the city, the hooded protesters charged the police with firecrackers, while others were caught on camera throwing projectiles. The officers retaliated by firing tear gas in an attempt to get the situation under control. The citizens were seen running for cover as the clash between the forces and the demonstrators escalated. Now, ahead of the elections on the 24th of April, both candidates are pulling out all stops to woo the voters. As the first round of voting on the 10th of April had set the stage for a rerun of the presidential battle of 2017. Last time, Macron had managed to beat Marie Le Pen very easily, as many voters had rallied behind him during the runoff. But since then, Emmanuel Macron is facing a much tougher challenge amidst the rising apathy amongst the voters, and also a sharp spike in popularity of Marie Le Pen, and also because of his rather poor performance in handling the COVID-19 pandemic, the financial situation in the country, and also for cutting down pensions of pensioners. Now, a day after Moscow suffered a huge setback with the loss of its premier warship in the Black Sea, Russia has now intensified its attacks on the Ukrainian capital of Kyiv. In the latest, Moscow has reportedly launched attacks on a Ukrainian rocket manufacturing factory near Kyiv's international airport. Taking the onus of the attack, Russia has said that it used the sea-based long-range missiles to hit the Vizar factory where the plant was situated.
Высокоточным оружием большой дальности воздушного базирования уничтожены производственные корпуса бронетанкового завода в Киеве и цеха ремонта военной техники в Николаеве.
Now, what is interesting is that the plant was attacked by the Russia-produced Neptune cruise missiles, the projectiles of which both Kyiv and Washington say were used to sink the Moscow warship. Now, to back the claims, a Pentagon official earlier said that the Russian 510 crew missile cruiser had been hit with 2 Neptune missiles. This stands in contradiction of what Russia has asserted so far. Moscow says that its warship lost balance in the rough seas. It also maintained that the ship was damaged due to an exploding ammunition which went off by mistake. and Ukraine is now bracing itself for Russian reprisal.
Очікується, що противник продовжить ведення бойових дій з метою виходу на адміністративні кордони Херсонської області та намагатиметься відновити наступ. В акваторії Азовського моря корабельне угруповання противника продовжує виконання завдань з блокування порту Маріуполь та здійснення вогневої підтримки на Приморському напрямку. Зважаючи на перебування в акваторії Чорного моря російських військових кораблів, озброєних крилатими ракетами морського базування «Калібр», зберігається підвищений рівень загрози застосування окупантами ракетного озброєння по об'єктах оборонно-промислового комплексу та логістичної інфраструктури нашої держави.
The attack on Kyiv's plant has resumed Russia's scattered attack on Ukraine as Moscow is now pivoting to mounting a new offensive in the eastern part of the country. Civilians, of course, were caught under the bombardment in the frontline town of Lysychansk. A shopping area was hit by the Russian bombardment, and it is not immediately clear if there have been any casualties in this particular place. Meanwhile, an oil refinery was heavily damaged in a Russian airstrike. Emergency workers rushed to the site to contain the fire. So it's well over 50 days since Russia started its invasion into Ukraine. And what Ukraine has since witnessed is unparalleled devastation of many of its cities. And now Russia is reassessing its strategy. It is shifting its attention away from some of the central Ukrainian cities from around the capital and is moving towards the east. So as Russia is pulling back from the major Ukrainian cities, the residents are now slowly beginning to trickle back into their homes. The villages and towns that they were forced to leave due to the intense fighting, and what they witness is complete devastation. Buildings bear the scars of the Russian shelling, streets have been littered with smashed tanks. But this is Huserovika, a small village that is about 150 kilometers southeast of Kharkiv. Local residents here say that they found bodies that have been burnt beyond recognition. Now, that bodies are being taken away by the Ukrainian authorities for post-mortem and to look for possible signs of torture. Locals claim that the Russian soldiers even lacked food rations, and they went around house to house asking for food.
Нічого, так проходили вони по хатах, в основному їсти просили. Хлопці молоді, може, що-небудь винесуть нам, ну, їсти хочемо. Провіряли теж, так ходили по хатах, документи спрашували, провіряли.
Now, the Ukrainian soldiers claim that they've managed to drive out the invading forces in some areas using anti-tank weapons and also the foreign-supplied Javelin missiles. The Ukrainian forces have said that they've forced Russia to retreat. But what have been left behind are dozens of destroyed armored vehicles, including tanks with the distinctive Z markings of the Russian forces.
На протяжении 20 дней артиллерией и при помощи ПТРК «Стугна», «Корсары», «Фаготы», «Джавелины» обходили противника справа-слева, заходили на выгодные позиции, полили им технику, заставили противника уйти отсюда. Он понял, что он в невыгодном положении. И 25-26 марта мы уже зашли полностью в населенный пункт Мусаровка.
Ukrainian authorities claim to have killed at least about 20,000 Russian troops and destroyed hundreds of tanks and armored personnel carriers since the invasion began. Ukraine also said that hundreds of Ukrainian civilians have been killed while under Russian occupation, claims that Russia has constantly denied. Now, with the sinking of the Russian flagship of the Black Sea, there is a new dimension that the conflict has acquired. Moscow has now warned Washington against arming Ukraine. This after the American President Joe Biden announced another $800 million of military assistance to Ukraine. Now, the Russians have accused the Biden administration of fueling the war in Ukraine, and Moscow has now sent a formal diplomatic note to Washington, D.C. The note, called the Démarche, was sent through normal channels, and it highlighted as to how weapons that are being sent by the United States were having an impact on the war. The note suggests that the Russians are extremely concerned with the new tranche of the sophisticated offensive weaponry that is a part of the Biden administration's $800 million package. So let's tell you as to what weapons the Biden administration is sending. Well, it consists of about 1,855 millimeter howitzer artillery, 40,000 rounds of artillery, and 200 M113 armored personnel carriers, and 11 Mi-17 helicopters, and 300 switchblade drones, and 500 Javelin anti-armor missiles. Now, according to the American officials, these weapons will help the Ukrainian soldiers to find a completely different style of war in the open areas of Donbas, where the Russian forces are appearing to massing up for an attack. The two-month war has severely depleted Kyiv's firepower, but the Ukrainian forces continue to fiercely resist the Russian onslaught. But its armory is said to have been depleted, and the Ukrainian president is now pressing for an urgent delivery of these new ammunitions.
Чим більше і чим швидше ми отримаємо всю зброю, яку запросили, тим сильніші будуть наші позиції, тим скоріше буде мир.
The Kremlin has warned that arming Ukraine with more weapons can actually lead to some unpredictable consequences, which includes targeting deliveries of weapons to eastern Ukraine. Now, this has become a point of some serious contention in Russia's 50-day-long invasion. It's also prompted some fresh risk of a direct Russia versus NATO confrontation. And there is some substance to the Russian threats, though. Moscow has repeatedly said that any weapon deliveries to Ukraine will be legitimate targets, which has made NATO rethink its vows to arm Ukraine. Now, the 13th of March, Russia, remember, had attacked the Ukrainian military base close to the alliance's border. Yavoriv base is located just 25 kilometers from the Polish border and was struck by a Russian missile that killed about 35 people and injured 134 others. Now, ever since Ukraine has managed to thwart Moscow's advances, forcing it to redeploy its troops, but the sinking of the Russian warship Moscow in the Black Sea has actually upped the stakes for Russia. Ukraine claimed that the Russian naval ship was hit by its own missile, a claim that has now got the backing of the Pentagon. The 510 crew missile cruiser was a symbol of Russia's military power, and it was leading its naval offensive on Ukraine. Washington claims that the damage of the Russian warship will now further impact Moscow's capacity to carry on with this war.
That said, this is a cruiser. They only have 3 in this class. It's a ship that is roughly 600 feet long. It has a crew of almost more than 400, almost 500 sailors on board. And it's basically designed for air defense. That's what this ship is designed to do, not unlike our own cruisers. So it's going to have an impact on their capabilities, certainly in the near term.
Now, Kyiv is bracing itself for a reprisal from Moscow. The Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has said that Russia could potentially use tactical nuclear weapons out of frustration at battlefield setbacks, echoing the comments that were earlier made by the CIA Director William Burns. Meanwhile, the British government has rather an interesting idea on how to deal with the refugees that are coming in from the war in Ukraine. And now there is a lot of outrage over the British government's decision to send the asylum seekers to Rwanda. The opposition parties in the United Kingdom are calling the deal as simply unworkable and also a waste of public money, while refugee groups have condemned this decision by the British government as simply inhumane. The announcement has come at a time when the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson is facing intense scrutiny over partying during the COVID lockdown. But Britain says that the deal will save countless lives from human trafficking. Now remember, migrants for decades have tried to reach Britain illegally. They hired in trucks or ferries since the pandemic began. They also use small boats arranged by smugglers. Approximately 28,000 people migrated to the United Kingdom last year. And the New Deal aims to identify these migrants from Rwanda and then send them back to their country. The British government will also contribute almost about $160 million for this project.
By relocating migrants to Rwanda, investing in their personal development and providing education, employment and other opportunities, we are giving them the chance to make new lives in our country as full members of our communities. This will not only help them, but it will benefit Rwanda and Rwandans and help to advance our own development.
But Rwanda has a very unique history in terms of refugees and resettlement in particular. First and foremost, Rwanda is a safe and secure country with the respect for the rule of law, and clearly a range of institutions that have evolved and developed over time.
The United Nations says that the new plan raises some serious human rights concerns. It has urged London to refrain from transferring asylum seekers and refugees to Rwanda for processing. The agency has said that people who are fleeing persecution should not be traded like commodities, and that is just not a humane way of dealing with them. Amidst this criticism, preparations to receive the refugees in Rwanda are in full swing. A hostel building, which has about 50 rooms, has been opened. This hostel will accommodate the asylum seekers who are being sent back. Meanwhile, heavy rains have wreaked havoc in South Africa, and according to reports that have come in, at least about 400 people have died because of the flooding. Thousands of people have been left homeless, and the search for the missing still continues. And there is no respite for many people who have been caught up in these very heavy rains. As fresh spells of rain poured into the region that is already grappling with its flood-ravaged situation, on Monday, the eastern part of the country received the heaviest recorded one-day downpour in over 60 years. Days of heavy rains has led to flooding in several areas, which has destroyed homes and has also ravaged infrastructure across the city. Emergency services in KwaZulu-Natal province of South Africa remain on high alert. The weather forecasters predict more rains over the weekend, and the rescue operations led by the disaster management teams are on survivors who are desperately looking for their missing relatives.
A couple of my brothers went by our house and told us that about 11 people died here and the house was down. For me, it was like a dream because I couldn't believe that the house was actually down because we thought this was the safest house.
The clean water has become scarce, and authorities are planning to deploy water tankers to meet with the demand. The South African government has announced an emergency relief fund of about $68 million. The climate activists from Extinction Rebellion group hit the streets of the French capital, Paris. The protesters vowed to disrupt the French elections, claiming that the policymakers and politicians have completely failed to keep their promises. We'll leave you with this report. Thanks for watching.
Of course, we are rising up against the far right, whose values are violent and are unacceptable for us, and against a candidate who for 5 years cast the ecology issue aside and lied. He promised us to act for the climate. He claimed to be the champion of the climate. He put in place a citizens' climate convention so that citizens could give suggestions that will allow for greenhouse gas reductions by 40% by 2030. And in the end, nothing was done.
Tu es assis tout seul? Oui, j'ai écouté des...
stay connected with the world through WION.
Israel claims to have destroyed a rocket launching site used by the Hamas.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has made no mention of any halt to the offensive.
We at WION have tracked this story from the word go.
WION reports on the latest health threat before the world.
People diagnosed with the coronavirus in Russia may be deported back to their home countries.
The looting started early Saturday.
South Africa is witnessing riots.
Hoping to a Taliban petrol now.
Hours of non-stop live broadcasts. The most extensive coverage. Biggest team of reporters on ground.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi launched the world's biggest vaccination drive.
India will have nearly 120 million doses.
We know that our shared planet is changing for the worse.
We need constructive dialogue. It's time.
Welcome to Melt. I'm Sharmishta Mukherjee, co-founder at Flying Cursor Interactive and recently turned author of the book, Cancer You Picked the Wrong Girl. Yes, we're trying out something new on Melt TV, where people from the advertising and marketing industry like me are taking over as anchors of the show. Every month, you'll see a new face welcoming you to the show, and I'm honored to be the one kicking this off. So let's get to it. Group M ESP, the entertainment, esports and sports division of media agency Group M India, recently released the 9th edition of its Sporting Nation in the Making report. The report states that sports sponsorship in India grew a whopping 62% in 2021 to cross the 9,500 crore rupee mark. That's not just a strong bounce back from 2020, but also a 5.5% growth over the 2019 top line of 9,000 crore rupees. The growth was once again primarily driven by cricket, of course, which constitutes 88% of the industry. To know more, Anant Rangaswamy, editor of Melt, is in conversation today with Vineet Karnik, head sports, entertainment and esports, Group M South Asia. So let's get ready to melt with Vineet Karnik.
Hello Vineet, how are you?
Hi Anant, all well Anant, thanks. How are you doing? All good?
All good. So good to talk to you because now with 90% of your revenue coming up in the next few months in terms of...
Not really, but yeah, I mean, yeah, significant chunk, yeah.
Yeah, you know, I was going through a report like I do every year, and I was hoping for the non-cricket revenue to go to 15%, 18%, 20%. That doesn't happen.
Right.
Is there any use covering other sports at all in this country?
Okay, so you have an absolutely valid point you're making, Anant, and I'm glad that you asked that question. In fact, the name of our report itself says it's Sporting Nation in the Making. So obviously, when we started off thinking about putting this together 9 years back, and this is the 9th edition, we obviously were very bullish and thinking about India becoming one of the most invincible sporting nations, considering IPL had given us such a massive headway and cricket as a sport had grown so much over the last 3 decades or so. So obviously we were all hoping that over the last 10 years, the emerging sporting economy, the way we call it, I mean the football, the kabaddi, the volleyball, badminton, table tennis, would have really catapulted. Yeah. Having said that, obviously it started happening. So if you look at some of the numbers from 2013, 2014 point of view, the emerging sporting economy was really growing very, very well. What happened, we all know in 2020, and that sort of put in a serious amount of brakes on the newer sporting landscape per se, and that's the reason you are seeing a low number on the emerging sport compared to what we ourselves have reported in 2018 and 2019. Having said that, if you take a quick sneak peek into the numbers, overall the sporting numbers are back, and we are absolutely happy to say that we have grown at a pace of 62% over 2020, and that's a very, very encouraging sign for the industry. Yes, a significant amount of chunk, as always, has come from cricket, but nonetheless, we have seen kabaddi coming back, we have seen football coming back in terms of ISL, we saw volleyball league coming back, and I'm sure 2022 is the year when we are going to be seeing most of the leagues which couldn't happen because of COVID coming back in India, and that should help the numbers significantly in 2023 when we are reporting the 2022 numbers.
Okay, now a question which is a little off curriculum. Give me your comments on Baiju and the FIFA World Cup.
Okay, so great. So Anant, I haven't studied that. I've caught up the news. I'm sure you would want to know the deal size, you would want to know how many years and so on and so forth. And a lot of people have been calling us for this. I think we should be ready to give you some kind of an insight on this in the next couple of hours. So as of now, right now, we are not ready with those numbers.
Okay, now tell me, I'm never one to get excited about numbers. In principle, what do you think of the Baiju association with FIFA? What does it mean? What does it signify?
It's phenomenal, isn't it? For a brand which is going global, it very clearly says that an Indian edutech brand is going global, and that's the reason why the need of a global property. And we all know football as a sport, or FIFA as a World Cup body who runs football in the world is perhaps the most reached property from a sporting standpoint. And it's very clearly an indicator that Baiju as a edutech company from India has got global ambitions, and that's the reason why they have taken a position on such an important property, which is perhaps the biggest in the world.
I've also not got an idea of the granular details, but is it like one of those where, say, Lava Phones was a sponsor of Liverpool Football Club, for example?
Yeah, again, so as I said, we haven't studied the deal as yet. We will certainly get back to you once we are ready with this answer.
Okay, cool. So Vineet, now tell me, going by your numbers, the future of non-cricket sports is optimism and a punt. For a marketer, is it worth getting into non-cricket sport? And if so, what kind of brands and categories should attack non-cricket sports?
Yeah, sure. So that's again a great question, and I'm a big fan of these kind of things because we really believe that from an India perspective, we are a one sporting nation as of now. But I think from the size and scale of a country, we definitely have a massive potential to have at least 2, if not 3 sports which are going to be seriously growing in this country. So from that standpoint, your question is absolutely welcome, Anand. And to give you a heads up and perspective on this one, we believe that somewhere the advantage of the emerging sport, and I would bring in the gaming and the e-sport here as well, and I would call it a sport because you know that we are going to be in Asian Games this year come September. So I would consider esports and gaming also to be an important aspect of this question. So therefore, I think that advertisers need to look at building a sport bottom up, because when you're building a sport bottom up, you're actually considering and engaging a new fan, right? Because cricket is a mass sport in India, undoubtedly the biggest sport in India. So if you need scale and numbers, which is at a blimp overnight, cricket is a sport to go with. But if you are a young brand and targeting younger audience or younger generation, today you would want to engage with them at a much early stage. So for example, if the purse size of advertising or sponsoring a kabaddi or a football or an e-sport league today is far different than sponsoring a cricket league, isn't it? From that standpoint, I think we need to engage and build these sports bottom up, and that's the advantage marketeers can take actually from a marketing standpoint, from a consumer engagement standpoint, where they're actually investing into a completely new sport, new audience, new economy, and actually growing with the sport. So that's the way we are looking at it, and that's what we advise our clients whenever we talk about sports strategies and so on and so forth.
Let's take a quick break here. When we return, we continue the conversation with Vineet Karnik.
One World Trade Center, that is the one where the
It's code red for humanity. The alarm bells are deafening. Wildfires, floods, and hurricanes. Extreme climate events warn of impending doom. Is the world heading towards a climate catastrophe? Watch WION's Climate Tracker weekdays at 12 p.m. GMT, 5:30 p.m. IST.
You don't know how to fix the holes in our ozone layer. You don't know how to bring the salmon back up a dead stream. You don't know how to bring back an animal now extinct. And you can't bring back the forest that once grew where there is now a desert.
You have ignored us in the past and you will ignore us again. We have run out of excuses and we are running out of time.
Show us your faithfulness. Show us your trustworthiness. Show us your honesty. Prove.
Welcome back. You're watching Melt, and I'm Sharmishta Mukherjee, author and co-founder at Flying Cursor Interactive, taking over as anchor of this show. Let's continue our conversation with Vineet Karnik from Group M South Asia. In this segment, Vineet talks about the growth of esports as well as the IPL.
So Vineet, the world over, if you look at large sports properties, if the ticket size of a sponsorship is X, brands tend to spend 1.5x, 2x, 2.5x on activities related to the sponsorship. In India, even in the IPL, we're not seeing that. There's very little that, say, the franchisees say, except for RCB or a little bit Chennai Super Kings and so on. We are not seeing brands leverage sponsorship except for the money they put on their logo and the media. How do you react to that, and what should brands be doing?
Yeah, sure. So you have a valid point, Anand. I mean, worldwide, we normally say that if you're investing $100 in investing in sponsorship, you should invest at least 100, if not more, in activating it. Yeah. See, today the activations itself world over, if you observe, has changed, right? So initially, when we used to activate, we used to look at a traditional campaign, which is print, TV, outdoor, digital. Okay. Today, if you look at India as a sponsorship market, most of the advertisers, and I would say almost to the tune of about 65 to 70%, are digital first advertisers who are, most of them are platforms themselves. Yeah. So activation from their lens is a very, very different ball game. So it's not that people are not spending on activation, they do spend on activation, but the spends are getting divided into multiple different platforms, multiple different media buckets. And that's the reason why you don't typically see a campaign of the natures that we would have seen in late 90s or in early 2000s. So yeah, I mean, we would encourage marketeers to do more, but it's not true completely that activations don't happen. Activations happen, but the fragmentation of media platforms are not able to give people the sense that the kind of money is being spent, because a significant amount of money today is spent on digital as a platform, which obviously is growing every year. So yeah, I think there is a scope, there is headroom to do more, but I would not completely agree by saying that people don't activate. People do activate. Yeah, I think there is headroom to grow.
Right. So, it's a funny market. We've got new brands coming into the sports space, especially cricket. I mean, for want of a different conversation, all sport is equal to cricket in my book, yeah. You go back to the beginning of IPL, brands which dominated TV at that time, say DLF and people like that, they don't even exist. Today we are seeing most of the visibility going to, new age companies as opposed to brick and mortar companies. Shall we say digital first or tech first companies. So now all these brick and mortar companies once upon a time had the money and the need to use sports or leverage sport. Where is that money going, and where is that unmet need going?
Yeah, so it's a cyclic change, Anand. So I mean, we have also been observing that change. So today what's happening is an appetite of the new age companies who are trying to arrest the consumer mind space, or trying to create a sort of top of mind recall in the consumer mind space, are the guys who are startups. And if you look at IPL, I mean, since you keep talking about cricket and you obviously believe, and cricket is the biggest sport in the country, let's talk about cricket and IPL for a minute. If you look at the 10 advertisers on cricket on ground, okay, out of which 6 to 7 of them are the startup companies. Yeah, that's what you can't take that away. And those are the guys who are pushing the envelope from a marketing standpoint harder. Yeah, and therefore are trying to create an ecosystem and want to arrest the cricket fan base, which is absolutely mass in the country. So to answer your second part of the question, where is what happens to the traditional companies? Obviously, traditional companies have moved on and trying to do multiple things from a consumer standpoint. So they are, everybody is looking at their own marketing and communication strategy. Currently, sports obviously is the most attractive, because obviously we all know that sports attracts appointment viewing from day one, and that appointment viewing is something where the startup guys are feeling the need to arrest more, and therefore they've been more aggressive on the sport as a sector, I would say.
Right. Now I'll come to another part of your report, which is there's a lot of attention paid to, esports, e-gaming, and surprisingly, you got NFTs, which have found a way into it. Now, all these, do they have any meaning at the top of the funnel in your brand, or is it all just bottom of the funnel? Because I can't see any brand activity at the top.
Sure. So if you look at, I will talk about these things in two parts. One, I'll talk about esports, and then I'll come to the blockchain, NFTs. In our mind, from a sporting standpoint, it's fan tokens, more of that. But I will come to it. So basically, we always knew that a younger age group who's a 10-year, 12-year, going up to 24 or maybe 30. are playing games on their smartphones or consoles or whatever. We knew that already in 2017, 2018, right? So what COVID did, COVID catapulted that entire sector big time. And thing that people like you and me would say, okay, perhaps people play game, we all started believing because it started happening in our own homes, in our own neighborhoods, and it was in your face, right? So therefore, definitely it had given a big advantage to the gaming and esports as a sector. Now, if you look at numbers in the esports part, they are massive. Okay, that all sort of numbers that are floating around in the market. We just did a gaming report which we launched 10 days back, where we said that it's a 15,000 crore industry, which is quite large, right? So today you might look at it from a bottom of the funnel where advertisers are trying to test waters and experiment with that business. But we definitely believe with the kind of attention the gaming industry from worldwide has, in terms of whether it's the worldwide federations or in India or the entrance of esports in Asian Games, Commonwealth, and hopefully Olympics, will definitely give it a huge thrust, and not only at an individual level, but at a federation level, at a government level, people will look at esports and gaming seriously, because at the end of it, you would want to win those medals going forward in the world stage. So therefore, these are multiple data points which we believe will help gaming and esports business take scale up from here. And therefore, marketeers will look at it in a more aggressive way. Today, I agree with you that it's a slow burn. People are only experimenting and scratching just the tip of the iceberg. But we definitely do believe in the next year or so, we will definitely see serious amount of investments from a marketing perspective going into gaming and esports in India. So that's one part of the question. Second part of the question, which was around blockchain and NFTs, from a sporting standpoint, I would love to use this word called fan tokens, because today if you see, fans from a cricketing perspective have grown organically over 30-35 years, right? But the newer sports, a football or a kabaddi or a volleyball or a badminton or gaming or esports, yeah, will need a lot of help from a fan engagement standpoint. And today with blockchain technology coming in, I think fan tokens becomes a fantastic tool which will make fan engagement much more robust, much more accessible, and much more compatible to engage fans with. And no sooner you will see a lot of campaigns, and we are currently privy to at least 5, if not more, top companies in the country who are looking at taking serious positions and investing in fan tokens, where they believe that starting early will help them arrest that sector as well, and go closer to the fans who are eventually their consumers. So I would want to believe fan tokens is something which is here to scale up. Year and two from now, we will obviously have these answers more clarified in terms of numbers and engagement. But we are very, very excited with gaming, esports, and fan tokens as a sector going forward.
So, Vineet, in your report, I read about opportunities for sports, non-cricket sports people, and opportunities for women sports stars, in the new scheme of things. But again, do they really get the eyeballs required to make for good brand ambassadors or endorsers?
I completely agree with that point in terms of whether the non-cricketing stars do deliver value to advertisers is what you are possibly hinting at. So you look at Neeraj Chopra. I mean, the kind of campaigns that he got after winning the Olympic gold were phenomenal. I mean, today the tally that Neeraj has that in our report is about 14 to 15 brands that he's endorsed. And look at the kind of value and mileage that he has got, the clutter that he has broken over the last 7 to 8 months. I mean, we've been observing those campaigns, and some of the brands who are smartly using it. I think that's a very, very clutter breaking thing. Now, PV Sindhu, which we thought 5 years back is something who's a new kid on the block at an endorsement circuit, continues to excite advertisers, and today her tally is almost about 17 to 18 brands, which means that if there is consistency for a non-cricket non-cricketing sports star over the last 4 to 5 years, and advertisers are consistently believing in marketing their products and services through these sports stars, I'm sure that's somewhere working in the minds of consumers. Otherwise, advertisers are the first ones to back out and possibly not continue those associations. So what we have seen right from the days of Mary Kom, Saina Nehwal, PV Sindhu, and now Neeraj Chopra, is somewhere advertisers are very smartly utilizing them from a campaign perspective, because they help them break the clutter. At the same time, always remember, individual sports stars worldwide are always bigger than the team sports stars. So winning an Olympic gold or winning a Commonwealth medal is absolutely well respected, and that's what brings them closer to the consumers. And I think this trend will continue, because I am a firm believer that every year we have delivered well at various different world stages. Could be Asian Games, could be Commonwealth, could be Olympic, and the medal tallies only go up. And the endorsement seen from a new age sports stars point of view will continue to grow.
Now, this is the final question, and I want you to take a deep breath before you answer it. So, the next IPL bid.
Yeah.
Give me a number. Give me a number.
Okay, so very difficult to give you a number, Anant, and I'll tell you the reason why I can't give you the number. Okay, there's number floating around in media multiple times. So unless and until we see the tender document, any number is a speculation in my mind.
Okay, that you ducked well. So let me now put you into a corner. So 2022 IPL, what will the TV revenues be? This current IPL.
So as we speak, the consolidation of various different FCTs and inventories is happening. This particular number is getting consolidated, and we should be ready in about 10 to 15 days before we are ready to talk to you on that.
Okay, forget about consolidation. Give me the Group M number then. That you don't have to work hard.
So that's Mr. PK and Sid who will possibly help you with that.
Okay. Anyway, well ducked again. Okay, let me give you a number. I'd say 2,500 crores is Group M in this year's IPL.
That's damn good.
Let's see what happens with that. So anyway, let's see where that holds. So thank you so much. And, I think rather than talk to you only once a year, which is what we've been doing over the last few years,
right?
We should figure out a way to talk to you mid-year also, to try and figure out any changes in the landscape that are
Absolutely. There. We should review this maybe mid-year, and that will help us look at how the 2022 as a year will shape up, and we can do a roundup sometime in about September, October, because that should be a good season. IPL would have been done. We will be closer to the World Cup scene, so we will have far more deeper understanding of how 2022 is shaping up. So we should do that. And thanks a lot for doing this, Anant. Absolutely appreciate, and always a pleasure to talk to you, because the kind of understanding and research and deep questions that you throw on us really helps us work harder to answer your questions. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much.
Well, Melt will certainly be keeping a close eye on the IPL rights. With that, it's a wrap on this episode. You can follow Melt on social media. The handle is Ready to Melt, or simply log on to readytomelt.com. While you're at it, and if you'd like to, actually don't have a choice, follow me, Agent Greenglass, on Twitter and Instagram. Till next week, goodbye and thanks for watching.
1 trillion speed.
claims to have destroyed a rocket launching site used by the Hamas.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has made no mention of any halt to the offensive.
We at WION have tracked this story from the word go.
WION reports on the latest health threat before the world. People diagnosed with the coronavirus in Russia may be deported back to their home countries.
The looting started early Saturday.
South Africa is witnessing riots.
Hoping through a Taliban-led call down.
Hours of non-stop live broadcast. The most extensive coverage. The biggest team of reporters on ground.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi launched the world's biggest vaccination drive.
India will have nearly 120 million doses.
We know that our shared planet is changing for the worse.
We need constructive dialogue. It's time, it's time, it's time.
Protests like these are now a frequent affair.
A friendship that has stood the test of time, dehyphenating geopolitical equation and focusing on bilateral issues.
Place where I'm standing will be the site of the opening battle. As you can see, the reserve forces are getting ready. They're picking up the weapons here.
Ringside, Ukrainian military drills. The Ukraine conflict is intensifying. WION brings you all sides of the story.
The reserve forces are
one of the many protest marches.
Well, thanks for staying with us. You're watching WION World is One. My name is Mohammed Saleh, and let's start with the top stories of the day. The world's richest man, Elon Musk, in his latest salvo has questioned the intention of the Twitter board. He said that the board collectively owns almost no shares, and therefore their economic interests are not aligned with the interests of the company's shareholders. Hamza Sharif has been elected by the Punjab National Assembly as the 21st Chief Minister of the province by 197 votes. This after the PTR workers clashed with the PMLN workers in the House, disrupting the session. And protests in Sri Lanka continue for the 8th straight day, with trade unions laying siege to President Gotabaya Rajapakse's seafront office, demanding for his immediate resignation due to the economic crisis that has been brought about under his rule. And according to media reports, EU's anti-fraud body has accused the French far-right candidate Marine Le Pen of embezzling almost about $600,000 along with her associates during her time as member of the European Parliament. And there are reports of shelling at an oil refinery that has set it ablaze in Lysychansk city of the Luhansk province after Russian troops have intensified their attacks in Ukraine. And at least 8 people have been shot while several others have sustained injuries during a shootout at a mall in South Carolina's Columbia. The police so far have detained 3 people with firearms while investigations are still underway. And 3 first-half goals keep Liverpool's historic quadruple dream alive as they beat Manchester City with a scoreline of 3-2 to reach their first FA Cup final in over a decade.
India's neighborhood on the boil. Pakistan and Sri Lanka in turmoil. Pakistan gets a new prime minister after no trust vote. Sri Lanka prime minister stares at a no trust vote.
For the Rajapaksas, these decisions could spell the end of their regimes.
And in an act of protest have come together in unity. Now all eyes would be on this building.
WION tracks the biggest stories from South Asia. Imran takes his fight to the streets. Rajapaksas reach out to protesters in vain. Every detail, all updates, only on WION.
Alright, so let's start this broadcast with the big story that has come in from Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka's economy is in trouble, so it has now turned to the International Monetary Fund for a bailout package. The newly appointed Finance Minister Ali Sabri will be heading to Washington later today, and he'll be holding talks with the global monetary body. And the negotiations are for an immediate bailout amidst a foreign exchange crunch that the island nation is facing, which has made it impossible for Sri Lanka to even purchase some essential imports like food, fuel and medicines. The Central Bank of Sri Lanka has suspended foreign debt payments and has diverted the dwindling foreign reserves that Sri Lanka now has to importing essential items like even food. Now, Sri Lanka needs about $3 to $4 billion this year to pull itself out of an unprecedented economic crisis that its government has now dug itself into. The talks are scheduled to begin in Washington on the 18th of April if the delegation succeeds in making a decent case before the IMF. The emergency relief funds can be expected within weeks. Citing the economic crisis in the country and also the rising external funding pressures, multiple rating agencies have now downgraded Sri Lanka's sovereign rating. Remember, this means that it will be much more difficult for the Sri Lankans to in fact raise revenue in the coming weeks. What is interesting is that Fitch has now downgraded Sri Lanka's foreign currency rating. The credit agency has said that the move reflects its view that a sovereign default process has already begun. Another rating agency, the Standard & Poor's Global, has said in a statement, and I quote here, Sri Lanka's debt restructuring process is likely to be very complicated and could take several months to complete, as the government is scrambling to secure external assistance. Now, IMF's mission chief for Sri Lanka, Masahiro Nozaki, was reported as saying that the IMF supported the country's plans to engage with creditors, and I quote him here, "We assess Sri Lanka's debt to be unsustainable and that the country's fiscal efforts and macroeconomic policy adjustments alone could not restore debt sustainability." The IMF has extended help to Sri Lanka the last time in 2016. The loan was capped at about $1.5 billion, but the program was prematurely terminated after disbursing $1.3 billion. Sri Lanka has now again turned to countries like China and India for support amidst a weak foreign reserves position. The Sri Lankan nation is also in talks with the World Bank and the Asian Development Bank for support. Now, ahead of negotiations for a debt restructuring with the IMF, the cash-strapped country's loss-making national carrier has revealed plans to lease aircrafts. Despite the crisis, state-owned Sri Lankan Airlines will be expanding its fleet from 24 to 35 planes over the course of the next 3 years. The national carrier did not say as to how it plans to finance the leases. The plan came the same day that Fitch downgraded bonds issued by the airline, suggesting that the carrier was near default. Sri Lanka, interestingly, has also announced a 5-day share trading halt at its stock exchange. Colombo Stock Exchange officials have said that they were under pressure not to reopen to prevent an anticipated collapse of the market. Meanwhile, the protesters on the ground remain pretty adamant on demanding President Gotabaya Rajapaksa's removal. The demonstrations have raged across Sri Lanka for several weeks, and people are extremely angry by the prolonged power cuts and shortages of fuel and medicines. Citizens have camped outside of the presidential secretariat for almost about a week now. The first high-profile sports star to join the demonstrators include the likes of the Sri Lankan World Cup winning captain Arjuna Ranatunga and also the man you're looking at on your screens, Sanat Jayasuriya. Now, several trade unions have also joined the demonstrators, laying siege to President Gotabaya Rajapaksa's seafront office. Thousands of health sector trade workers marched to the Galley Face Promenade to join the protest.
For years and years, the Rajapaksa government has been taking money from us and really stealing from us, and we are sick and tired of this tyranny because this is there's so much nepotism here. The Prime Minister and President are brothers, and we really want them to go away from here because when they are here, most of us don't see any prosper for our nation, because as long as they're here, they won't be able to fix our economy because they don't want to fix our economy.
Let's now shift our attention to what is happening in Pakistan. As the turmoil continues in the country, the PTI has held protests against the ouster of Imran Khan. Now, thousands of people took part in a rally in support of Imran Khan in Karachi. The PTI workers, along with thousands of Imran Khan supporters, took to the streets on Saturday. Now, addressing the rally, the PTI chairperson Imran Khan asked his supporters if his now-dissolved government was up against a foreign conspiracy or was there a mere interference by some foreign forces to destabilize not just his government but indeed the whole of the country. This, of course, was an indirect reference to the Inter-Services Public Relations Director General, Major General Babar's recent remarks on the National Security Committee meet that was held last month. Imran Khan, however, did not mention about the Pakistani military agency openly during his speech. Imran Khan continued to accuse the United States of hatching a conspiracy against his government that brought about the downfall of his government. He alleged that this was due to the fact that he had refused to bow down before the demands by the Americans to condemn Russia. He told the crowd that the United States Assistant Secretary of State for South Asian Affairs, Donald Lu, had threatened to push Pakistan to the edge if the no-confidence motion against him had not succeeded in toppling his government.
Imran Khan के खिलाफ अदम एतमाद कामयाब ना हुआ तो पाकिस्तान के ऊपर बड़ी मुश्किलों का सामना करना पड़ेगा। धमकी दी और फिर कहता कि अगर अदम एतमाद इमरान खान के खिलाफ कामयाब होगी तो पाकिस्तान को माफ कर दिया जाएगा.
The PTR chief also questioned the judiciary of the country during his speech in Karachi. Khan repeated his grievance against the judiciary over his ouster, questioning its decision of opening the court at midnight and also asking what crime had he committed to warrant such a move by the court. Now, Imran Khan also slammed the new Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif. The former cricketer called out the sitting government and its allied parties for siding with the Americans to unseat him. He's accused them of being foreign stooges. He's also pointed out that Shehbaz Sharif is actually out on bail and has accused the current regime of being a group of criminals who would rob Pakistanis of their future. Now remember, Imran Khan was ousted from power last week and has now demanded that a judicial commission he merits of his claims regarding the cable and foreign conspiracy should investigate as to what is the truth behind this matter under the supervision of the Chief Justice of Pakistan. Furthermore, he has also demanded that the foreign funding case against his party should be heard together with similar cases against the PMLN and the PPP. All right, let's now shift our attention to what is happening in North Korea. North Korea has test-fired a new weapons system under the supervision of their leader, Kim Jong-un. And all of this is according to reports that have been published in the state-controlled media, the KCNA. KCNA has given no additional details of the launch of this latest missile, but it has linked it to the country's nuclear objectives. The test caps days of celebration surrounding the birth anniversary of the country's founding leader, Kim Il-sung. The North Korean state media reported that the country had test-fired a new weapon system, adding that the new type of tactical guided missiles was of great significance to the nation's defense, as it drastically improves the firepower of the frontline long-range artillery units and also enhances the efficiency of the operation of the tactical news. The KCNA also reported that the North Korean leader was personally present during the testing of this latest missile and was out there giving some important instructions to the people who were testing out this latest weapon. And it's also advised his administration to further build up its defense capabilities and fortify North Korea's nuclear combat forces. The launch is, of course, the latest one in an unprecedented blitz of sanctions, busting weapons tests that have been done by the country this year. Earlier in 2022, North Korea had fired an intercontinental ballistic missile at full range for the first time since 2017. Interestingly, the latest test comes just days ahead of the US-South Korea military training exercise, which are being set to begin on the 18th of April. Now, if you have an interest in the unknown details of American history and politics, then this new series could just be your thing. Starring Viola Davis, Michelle Pfeiffer and Gillian Anderson, the series is expected to make huge waves. Our next one gets you all the details.
History always tells us about the former presidents of the United States, their work, their speeches and policies. But how well do we know their first ladies who have struggles of their own? We are finally going to get a glimpse at some of the big names who made history throughout their time in the White House. Viola Davis, Michelle Pfeiffer and Gillian Anderson are stepping into the shoes of Michelle Obama, Betty Ford and Eleanor Roosevelt respectively. The series does a deep dive into the lives of three prominent First Ladies, detailing their time at the helm of power in Washington, D.C.
Well, I think we're in a day and age I think that we, not really, but understand the role of the presidency, but we don't understand the people behind that, or the women who walk beside those men. And I think that it was important to sort of crack the lid off of that. I think that we do a lot of the work, even if it's just support.
As the series sails through time to explore just how much things have changed, it highlights the fact that the role of the First Lady continues to remain critical.
Well, I think what I found the most surprising about her was her whole story, which not a lot of people know. I think how politically active she was, how she was a real kind of maverick. I mean, she was a pro-choice Republican first lady who took on a feminist agenda, and she came out and openly spoke about her own breast cancer, which was, again, another very taboo subject at the time.
Oscar-winning star Viola Davis is also the executive producer of The First Lady. In addition to the three leads, the cast also includes O.T. Fegbenley as Barack Obama, Aaron Eckhart as Gerald Ford, Kiefer Sutherland as Franklin D. Roosevelt. The series will start streaming from April 17th. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
I'll be here for you.
All right, let's also now take a quick look as to what is making news in the world of entertainment. The country superstar Gareth Brooks, who is playing 2 nights at the Nissan Stadium, has said that he would much rather play indoor venues now after the COVID pandemic. He was obligated to reschedule and also change many stops on his tour. The national tour dates, his weekends were rescheduled from summer last year, but due to thunderstorms, he had to postpone them again. He's still got several more stadiums to play at this year, but it's been hard on his band and crew with so much uncertainty. Now, Josh Brolin, who grew up in California, always knew that men like Royal Abbott, a character that he's playing in his latest venture, Outer Range. Although he has been widely appreciated for his performance, he's personally glad that he isn't one of them. The actor has said that people like Abbott think that they are loyal, but the actor feels that this misguided belief that he's protecting his family is a very selfish act of not wanting to talk about things that threatens them. And Hollywood actor Jennifer Garner turns 50 today. Her first role was for a television movie called Zoya, a period drama about a young Russian countess who escapes the 1917 revolution and then makes a new life for herself in America. The actor also starred in the Emmy Award-winning television series Law & Order and Spin City in the late 90s. She garnered immense fame for her roles in Alias, 13 Going on 30, Daredevil, Juno, Elektra, Dallas Buyers Club and Love, Simon. Alright, now if you're someone who's trying to hit your 2022 fitness goals, then you must have heard of this term that goes as HIIT, that is high intensity interval training. But how good is it really, and does it give you any results? Our next poll gets you the details.
You have 30 seconds. Come on, give it all you got. Keep going. Earn your rest. But wait, there's only 15 seconds of rest and then you go again. Sounds familiar? Welcome to the world of HIIT, or high intensity interval training. Say the words maximum burn in minimum time and you'll find plenty of takers signing up to hit the gym. In the world of HIIT, you alternate between high and low intensity exercises or rest. Need a practical example? Imagine sprinting up a flight of stairs followed by a brisk walk down. This is the essence of interval training. And if you Google weight loss or quick fat loss, this term is likely to be thrown at you. Don't get us wrong, the benefits of such workouts are well documented. It improves your metabolic health, basically how your body turns food into energy. Some say it helps you lose fat and gain muscle. It burns more calories in less time. It is also said that it improves your cardiovascular health. In an HIIT workout, you would reach 80 to 85% of your maximum heart rate, simply because of the high intensity of your workouts. Here's a case study. Open your Instagram and you'll see HIIT workouts getting millions of views. Celebrities have endorsed them, shown you the before and the after. It's a workout which has received social media's approval. and has been glamorized by the fitness industry. So it sounds great, right? A mere 15-minute workout where you burn more calories and improve your heart health. What do you have to lose? Well, quite a lot. A report has highlighted that too much of high-intensity exercise may be counterproductive. The report finds that excessive HIIT can put pressure on your joints in particular, disrupt your metabolism, and lead to poor sleep. It can even cause lasting anxiety beyond your workout, say some experts. And those with underlying ailments and heart conditions definitely need to check with their doctor before taking this up. So should HIIT workouts be discarded to the social media recycle bin? No. The key here is balance. Just like too much screen time, too much sugar, or even excessive retail therapy, which can all be harmful, unchecked HIIT is not going to help you either. So stop using the excuse of, I don't have time, to opt for a quick fix. Don't let social media trends fool you. Back your workouts with good nutrition and choose what's sustainable for you in the long run, because you may be doing 50 burpees a day or more. But creaking joints at a later stage in life will make a simple walk a big task. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
Well, that's all the time we have in this edition of the News Bulletin. Stay tuned to WION.
Stay connected with the world through WION. Like the page on Facebook. It's code red for humanity. The alarm bells are deafening. Wildfires, floods, and hurricanes. Extreme climate events warn of impending doom. Is the world heading towards a climate catastrophe? Watch WION's Climate Tracker weekdays at 12 p.m. GMT, 5:30 p.m. IST.
You don't know how to fix the holes in our ozone layer. You don't know how to bring the salmon back up a dead stream. You don't know how to bring back an animal now extinct. And you can't bring back the forest that once grew where there is now a desert.
You have ignored us in the past and you will ignore us again. We have run out of excuses and we are running out of time.
Show us your faithfulness. Show us your trustworthiness. Show us your honesty. Prove us wrong. We desperately need you to prove us wrong. God help us all. If you fail to prove us wrong, God help us.
1 trillion species. 7.8 billion humans. 1.9 million species extinct. 1 planet. Where are we heading? What should we do? Watch Climate Tracker, only on WION. World is One.
From the world's most volatile region, conflicts over faith and boundaries. Stories of death, destruction, despair, and hope. WION brings you to the heart of the action. Incisive analysis, unrivaled perspective, and exclusive ground reports. Watch West Asia Post every Friday, 8:30 p.m. IST with me, Radi Francis. Only on WION. World is One.
Stay connected with the world through WION. Like the page on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter for new alerts. Instagram for videos.
Hello and welcome to WION. World is One. I'm Radi Francis and this is the West Asia Post. Today, our top story sounds like a déjà vu tale. This Ramadan was supposed to be more peaceful. West Asia was marking it without curbs after 2 whole years. But in Palestine, tensions are escalating. Clashes broke out in the West Bank. Several Palestinians have been killed by Israeli forces. Authorities are carrying on more and more raids in the occupied territories after a wave of attacks. So, as the region remains tense, will these tensions escalate into an all-out conflict like last year? We tell you more.
Over 16 Palestinians killed. A wave of attacks in Israel. Clashes in the Al-Aqsa compound, and the deadliest wave of violence since 2016. Palestinians and Israelis have witnessed an increase in violence, especially over the past month, and now during Ramzan. Several attackers targeted Israeli cities. Israeli forces stepped up raids. There were shooting and multiple arrests, with Palestinians killed across the West Bank. So far, 4 attacks took place in 4 Israeli cities. The attack killed 14 people. On the other hand, Israel increased its raids on Palestinian towns and villages. This led to daily clashes and arrests. Over 16 Palestinians, including teens, have been killed. The rise in violence is not an isolated phenomenon. Palestinians are slamming Israeli policies in occupied territories and lack of any strong leadership. Protests waged in cities across the West Bank, with shops and businesses shuttered in Ramallah. The latest bloodshed coincides with the holy month of Ramzan. For many, this is a deja vu moment. Last year, violent raids on the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound led to this. A deadly 11-day war between Israel and Hamas in Gaza itself. The conflict killed 200 people and battered the Strip. So, the biggest question now is, could this lead to an all-out war? More Israeli raids means more uptick of violence, like this one at the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound. This is where thousands gather to pray at night. This is where the Israeli police clashes with Palestinians, injuring several of them. Israeli police are said to have entered in force before dawn. Over 59 wounded people were evacuated to hospitals. One of the guards at the site was shot in the eye with a rubber bullet. There is now fears of a new conflict between Hamas and Israel. Hamas has called for a Palestinian general mobilization. They are calling on people to confront Israeli incursions. Tensions have been simmering in the holy city of Jerusalem. This year, the Muslim holy month of Ramzan coincides with both the Jewish celebration of Passover and Easter. In focus is the Al-Aqsa Mosque. This is Islam's third holiest site, a silver-domed mosque inside the 35-acre compound. This complex is referred to as Al-Haram al-Sharif, or the Noble Sanctuary, by Muslims. But the location is also considered holy in Judaism. For Jews, it is known by the name of Temple Mount. Jews believe the compound is where the biblical Jewish temples once stood. Since decades, it has been a flashpoint, the most contested territory in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Currently, Jordan acts as the custodian of Al-Aqsa. This was agreed to by both Israel and Jordan in a peace treaty. They decided that the Islamic Trust would have control over matters inside the compound. On the other hand, Israel would control external security. Non-Muslims would be allowed onto the site during visiting hours, but they would not be allowed to pray there. Recent calls by Israeli settler groups have further escalated tensions. They want Jews to raid the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound, asking them to perform the Passover sacrifice there on April 15th. For Palestinians, this is yet another threat, yet another Israeli attempt to change the holy site's sensitive status quo. Currently, the situation is gradually towards an escalation. The conditions are ripe for an explosion. Will this lead to an all-out war again? Only time will tell. West Asia Bureau, WION, World is One.
From Saudi Arabia to Yemen, Qatar, and much more. We have a lot more lined up for you in this edition of the West Asia Post. But first, as usual, let's take a look at what else is making the headlines across the region.
The World Bank says that the war in Ukraine has multiplied risks for West Asia's poorer countries by raising food and energy prices, and has warned of potential social unrest. A new report has revealed that women and children living in refugee camps in northwest Syria are facing chronic and high levels of violence and depression. Some women in the camps are even forced to engage in what is being termed as survival sex. Lebanon's government has agreed to disburse $15 million to temporarily resolve growing bread shortages in the country, but added that the funds would only last a few weeks. Kuwait is experiencing a severe shortage of expat workers in various sectors, especially professionals and craftsmen. This comes as tens of thousands of workers have left the country. Iran is hoping to host World Cup fans after an agreement with Qatar. Tehran is planning to expand air and sea travel while relaxing visa rules during the upcoming World Cup. Saudi Arabia has set the limit of 1 million Hajj pilgrims this year. Riyadh says Muslims from inside and outside the country will be able to perform the Hajj, providing they are fully vaccinated against COVID-19 and no older than 65.
It is a war that many have forgotten, but it is a war that remains till date. Yemen's exiled president has transferred power to a new council, one that will take part in the talks with the Houthi rebels. Now this comes as the war in Yemen enters its 8th year. With this new development, talks about peace are gathering pace. Now many are asking, will this finally end the war in Yemen? Let's take a look.
The war in Yemen began 7 years ago. In 2015, a Saudi-led coalition intervened in the West Asian nation. They supported the government against the Houthi rebels.